This movie is about a new crazy virus that has suddenly appeared on Earth. This virus has swept the world very quickly, and unfortunately more than 6 billion people have been infected. This virus is different from ordinary viruses, and is a mutant virus because it can change the personality of the patient. The perception of pain continues to decrease. This virus is even more powerful as it can turn a normal person into an infected person within 90 seconds. Although the virus is not fatal, it changes the genetics of the human brain and nervous system, causing it to become so ruthless that the entire person turns into a ruthless predator, unable to stop killing. Unfortunately, the disease is incurable, and no cure has been found, yet the numbers continue to rise. The medical system was paralyzed, and humanity was on the brink of an unprecedented disaster. A number of medical workers and military personnel survive, and their main goal in this time of crisis is to find the first infected person, called Patient Zero. The main character, Morgan, wakes up from his sleep to find that his wife has been infected and mutated into a zombie. At this point, Morgan is working with the military to find Patient Zero and develop an antiviral serum so that he can cure his infected wife. Currently, his team is holed up in an underground nuclear launch site, which is now a shelter for survivors. On this day, the military went outside to capture an infected man, and on this trip, they found a group of infected people 200 kilometers to the north. Dr. Gina said that Morgan has a unique ability to talk to infected people, to speak their language, because he has been bitten by them before, but has not changed. At this time, Morgan was in the interrogation room, interrogating the first zombie in front of him, hoping to get some clues. This zombie was named Joe, originally from Minnesota, who was infected in late October. The investigation revealed that this Joe was one of the oldest victims, and Morgan was calming the man down. When the colonel had enough of wasting time, he stormed in and broke the rules, shooting the infected man in the head. Morgan was furious when the clues he was trying to get were destroyed. Dr. Gina was also angry, but she realized the soldier's true intentions, which were nothing more than revenge. She herself warns the soldier that if he does it again, he will be removed from his post. Eventually, Morgan went to the place where his wife was being held and gave her an injection. But his wife, Janet, throws the anesthetic away because it has been done too many times without success. Suddenly, an unexpected event occurred when another infected victim entered, who was free of his handcuffs. Help rushed in. Unfortunately, Scooter was bitten by the infected, and the situation was urgent. The virus spread rapidly within 90 seconds, so Gina rushed to the emergency room and had no other choice but to perform the amputation, just in the nick of time. They were relieved that Scooter hadn't mutated, but the next moment he started showing signs of mutation, and were forced to shoot him dead. After a few moments of grief, Morgan had to get back to work. The next day, he had to continue his research. The second infected person, after being tortured, was from Minnesota, and had also changed by the end of October. Morgan tried to find out more, but the infected person wouldn't talk. In a meeting with the leaders, Dr. Gina proposed a theory, only to be opposed by the leaders. In the final decision, a cautious suggestion was made that the leaders send multiple teams to continue the search in full. Perhaps this time there would be something new. Upon returning to the sanctuary, Morgan took his own serum and gave it to his wife. Morgan's hopes began to fade. Janet wanted Morgan to give up on her. She wanted to get out and be free again. She was tired of being locked up. Morgan did his best to convince his wife and told her that he loved her very much. Morgan went to the lab and asked Dr. Gina to come out and make a serum for Janet. Morgan was now distressed at how distraught Janet was. Dr. Gina advises him not to take chances with his own blood, even if it is effective, and advises him to give up on his wife, as they are still far from the vaccine. Dr. Gina then takes the opportunity to profess her love for Morgan. Morgan avoided her and refused to return to Gina. At this point, Dr. Gina used a pregnancy test to find out that she was pregnant. Janet was in the room and seemed to feel something. At night, Morgan can't sleep. He remembers what happened that night when he and his wife were driving together and came across zombies. Morgan woke up to Janet's screams. At that time, the base found the bodies of several soldiers, all of whom had been bitten by zombies. One of the soldiers was conducting an inspection when a soldier suddenly rose up and bit the unsuspecting inspector. Chaos ensues in the shelter as the officers and the infected fight to the death. In the fight, those who are vulnerable are almost killed. Fortunately, Morgan appeared just in time to subdue him. Holding the infected man by the neck, Morgan stopped him and tried to talk to him to find out more. Finally, the infected man was put into the observation room for interrogation, and it was obvious that he was very different from other infected men. He could speak. He could control himself. He was not afraid of music like the other infected people. He seemed to be enjoying himself and lit a cigarette. The people there were surprised, and maybe it could be a breakthrough for them. They found an identity card on this infected man, a professor. Through Morgan's questioning, they found that the professor had reversed their previous perception that he was a cognitively independent infected person, which was rare. Morgan asked about his past, and he slowly recounted how he got infected. He was in class that day after starting the lecture, when his wife called him and he walked out of the classroom door. His wife panicked on the phone, saying that people were being attacked and he should go home. As she said this, there were infected people in the classroom attacking the students and creating chaos. The professor quickly escaped. Unfortunately, he was also attacked. He described how the virus felt when it attacked, how every nerve felt stretched. It was very painful. In the midst of this pain, a belief held him together and encouraged him to return to his family. The professor told him that there was no such thing as patient zero. In society, anyone can be the source of the virus, rich or poor, stranger, freak, feminist, intellectual, and so on. The virus has been hiding in our bodies for a long time, and the pressures of modern society have awakened it. With this sharp comment, Morgan was so overcome with emotion that he punched the professor in the face. Morgan then left the interrogation room, and Gina went to him, patiently talking through his problems and calming his mind. Morgan re-enters the interrogation room door and patiently talks to the professor, playing with his mind. He denied everything the professor said. He interrupted the professor and would not give up on finding patient zero. He would remain curious. In his search, he was determined to find a way to save everyone. Professor's mouth broke into a wide smile, and he calmly said that they didn't have enough time. Morgan looked at him with confidence. He asked Gina to take the frequency detector and look for it, but found nothing. So he rushed to the ward where the infected person was being held and asked the security guard to open the victim's door. Morgan took the frequency detector and searched his body, because the detector was in the wound on the infected man's body. Morgan hurriedly retrieved the object, but it was too late. The infected already knew where they were. Suddenly the base was flooded with zombies, and the infected broke through the door and started attacking the crowd of innocent people, and the scene became chaotic. The base had become a haven for the infected to run amok, and despite having weapons in their hands, the soldiers were unable to hold back the tide of infected. The people in the conference room watched the security footage and fell silent. As Morgan watched the infected being released from the cells, he began to worry about his wife and walked towards the cells. The streets were red and blood was pouring out. Fortunately, Janet was unharmed. The few people who were in the conference room thought they were safe, but they were soon overrun. The infected pushed open the door to the conference room and stormed in. Gina and the officer managed to escape safely to the isolation room. At this point, the commander was about to enter the quarantine room, but the officer shot him in the calf with his gun, closed the gate, and the commander was eaten by the infected. Gina did not expect that this officer would be so cruel to do such a selfish and horrible thing to his superior. At first, Gina relented. Then she saw an opportunity to take the officer's gun and rushed back to the basement. The officer was then shot when he tried to resist. Then Gina opened the door and went out. On the other side of the cell, Gina meets up with Morgan and Janet, who have just been reunited. She tells Morgan that she needs to retrieve the results of her experiment, having successfully retrieved theirs. As the infected gathered outside, they decided to exit through the ventilation ducts. They crawled through the ventilation ducts. During that time, they didn't dare make a sound, for fear that the infected would find out. But unfortunately, the experimental mice escaped and crawled into the ventilation ducts. Gina and Janet, who had been silent, were forced to catch the rats, which caused the duct to shake violently and the ventilation cover to fall. The loud noise not only attracted the attention of the infected people, but they were also found crawling in the ventilation room. The infected people chased behind them. Morgan got entangled with the infected people behind them, and the ventilation duct collapsed. Fortunately, they survived, but they were intercepted by the professor. The professor told them that he couldn't let them go. And what the professor said next really shocked Morgan. The professor tells him that Morgan is the patient they are looking for, and he will take him away. Janet and Morgan then fight against the professor, and Morgan, with his strength, pushes the professor towards the iron. Morgan survived because he was a half-zombie, and the wounds were not too deep. Then there were many infected people who entered. At a critical moment, Janet decided to stay where she was and inhibit the infected people, because she knew that Gina was pregnant. Morgan felt sad. Leaving his wife, whom he loved, on the other hand, Gina was pregnant with his child. Janet quietly closed the gate to hold back the wave of infected people. Morgan was desperate, not wanting his wife to be separated from him. And at the crucial moment, he and Gina had to climb the sewer ladder to the surface. When they reached the surface, they found a motorcycle and drove away. From then on, the survivors must continue to find ways to survive for the sake of human life. And the movie ends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. Because by subscribing, you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.